The story opens in a dimly lit biker bar, a haven for leather-clad bikers with rough exteriors and an air of intimidation. The sound of loud music fills the space, blending with the clinking of glasses and the booming laughter that echoes off the walls. The smell of whiskey and cigarette smoke lingers in the air, a familiar environment for the regulars who have claimed the bar as their own. The bar, despite its lively atmosphere, exudes a sense of exclusivity, where outsiders and newcomers are eyed with suspicion. Amidst the chaos, a black man walks through the door, his calm demeanor standing in stark contrast to the rowdy energy of the bikers. He is dressed simply yet sharply, a man who exudes quiet confidence. His presence does not go unnoticed, and the room suddenly becomes tense, as the usual camaraderie shifts into something darker. Biker after biker turns their heads, sizing him up, whispering amongst themselves, as if the sight of a well-dressed black man in this place is out of the ordinary, even provocative. The man, however, remains unfazed, maintaining his composure as he steps further into the bar, the eyes of the bikers following his every move. The first exchange comes quickly. One of the more brash bikers, a burly man with a thick beard and tattoos covering his arms, gets up from his seat. He walks over to the black man with a smirk, his voice laced with mockery. "You lost, or are you just trying to buy yourself some trouble?" The words drip with disdain, clearly meant to provoke, to test the man's reaction. The other bikers watch intently, their eyes flicking between the man and the instigator, sensing an impending altercation. The air is thick with tension, as the entire bar seems to hold its breath, waiting for the black man to respond. The black man, standing tall, unbothered by the insult, meets the biker's gaze with a calm, unwavering look. His eyes reveal little, but his stance speaks volumes, a quiet confidence that seems to challenge the biker's bravado without a single word spoken. The biker, seeing no immediate reaction, shifts nervously but maintains his aggressive posture, hoping for a rise, for something more to happen. The tension between them builds, but the man's calm, measured response doesn't waver. From across the room, other bikers begin to exchange murmurs, their hostile glances now turning into open mockery. Some chuckle under their breath, while others nod in approval of their companion's boldness. It becomes apparent that they were all waiting for the black man to show any signs of weakness or frustration. Yet, the man does not give in. Instead, he continues to stand tall, not backing down, but not engaging either. Unbeknownst to the bikers, the black man is no ordinary stranger. While they assume him to be just another target for their prejudices and insults, he is far more than they could ever imagine. He is an army officer, a man who has faced challenges far more intense than the petty hostility of a bar full of bikers. But for now, his military background remains hidden, as he chooses to rise above the taunts with a quiet strength, waiting for the right moment to reveal who he truly is. The black man's journey began years ago in the heart of military service, where he earned a reputation as a decorated army officer, admired by his peers and superiors alike. His record was flawless, numerous successful missions under his belt, each one displaying his strategic mind, unmatched bravery, and unwavering leadership. He was a man who had earned the respect of countless fellow soldiers, and even those he commanded, through his dedication to the job and his commitment to protecting others. His accolades were well-deserved, and while the medals on his chest spoke to his valor, it was the quiet confidence in his demeanor that commanded true respect. Having completed several tours of duty in some of the most dangerous regions of the world, The black man had seen it all. He had faced death countless times, stood shoulder to shoulder with his brothers and sisters in arms, and endured hardship that many would never understand. Yet, in all of his years of service, he had always maintained a sense of humanity and empathy. His sense of duty wasn't just about fighting. It was about protecting the innocent, standing up for what was right, and ensuring that those who were weaker, those who had no voice, were never forgotten. He carried the weight of those ideals with him long after his time in active duty had ended. Now, off duty, he was in town for personal reasons, on a short break from his military obligations. He was visiting an old friend, someone he had known since childhood. His plan was simple: relax, reconnect with an old buddy, and enjoy a few quiet days away from the rigors of his usual life. His days in the military had taught him to appreciate the small things, to cherish moments of peace. It was on one of these days, while walking through the town, that he found himself passing by the local biker bar. Unaware of its notorious reputation, he thought nothing of it. He was simply looking for a place to grab a drink before meeting his friend. He didn't realize that this seemingly innocent visit would soon place him in the middle of a storm, a situation that would bring to light the ugly nature of prejudice and the power of his own strength. The biker gang that ruled the town, however, was far from the simple group of rowdy motorcyclists that one might expect. They were a violent, racist gang, known throughout the region for their unchecked behavior and their penchant for intimidation. The gang's presence in the town was not just a matter of pride. It was a matter of fear. They controlled the streets, and anyone who dared to challenge their authority did so at their own peril. The gang had a stranglehold on the town, with its members perpetuating an atmosphere of tension and hostility. Their leader, a man named Frank, was notorious for his deep-seated hatred toward minorities. His disdain for anyone who wasn't like him wasn't just a private prejudice. It was something he wore as a badge of honor. Frank and his gang members were known for harassing anyone who didn't conform to their ideals, particularly targeting people of color. Whether it was verbal abuse, physical intimidation, or outright violence, they had a history of making life miserable for anyone who stood in their way. Frank was especially dangerous. His violent tendencies a reflection of his desire for dominance and control. He made it clear to the townspeople that they were either with him or against him, and the consequences of crossing him were severe. On any given night, the biker bar would be filled with the usual suspects: burly men in leather jackets, tattoos covering their arms, their faces hardened by years of living outside the law. The black man, who had only come to town for a short visit, had no idea that walking into this bar would place him on the radar of these notorious figures. What he didn't know was that the gang's reputation was more than just idle gossip. It was a living, breathing force that permeated every corner of the town. The moment he walked into the bar, he unknowingly walked into their territory, where their influence held sway, and the stage for a confrontation would soon unfold. The atmosphere inside the biker bar grew thick with tension as the leader of the gang, a large, intimidating man named Frank, noticed the black man who had entered. His eyes narrowed as he took in the stranger's calm demeanor and composed posture. Frank's prideful sense of superiority couldn't stand the idea of someone, especially a black man, walking into what he considered to be his territory without fear or hesitation. As the room fell silent, Frank's voice broke through, dripping with condescension. "Well, well, well. Look who's come to visit," Frank sneered. stepping forward with deliberate slowness. "What's a guy like you doing in a place like this? You don't belong here, do you?" The other bikers, sensing an opportunity for mischief, began to encircle the black man, closing in slowly. Their smirks and derogatory comments were aimed at provoking a reaction, but the man's calmness only seemed to infuriate them more. He stood firm, his posture relaxed but alert, a quiet strength emanating from him. He had seen far worse in his years of military service, and petty insults from a group of bikers weren't going to unsettle him. The biker hesitated for a moment, and in that split second of uncertainty, the black man saw his chance. Standing tall, he wiped the sweat off his brow and took a slow, deliberate step forward. The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. The bikers, still recovering from the unexpected assault, watched him intently. He knew the next few words would change everything. "Let me make this clear," the black man said, his voice cold yet calm. He wasn't angry anymore, not even frustrated. He was simply stating facts. "I'm an officer in the United States Army, a high-ranking officer." His words carried weight, echoing through the silent bars. Everyone in the room hung on to every syllable. The revelation hit the bikers like a thunderclap. The gang members, who had been so sure of their dominance just moments before, suddenly looked small and unsure. Frank, the gang leader, now visibly pale, stepped back slightly. His bravado from moments before began to crumble as the full force of the situation settled in. You're in the army," Frank stammered, his voice shaky. He tried to salvage what little dignity he had left, but his attempt came off as hollow, an echo of his earlier arrogance. The black man stood taller, his posture straight and resolute. He didn't need to prove anything. The gang's reaction, the surprise in their eyes, was proof enough. "I've served my country for years, led missions, been on the front lines," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "And, just like you've underestimated me, I know you think you can get away with whatever you want. But attacking a serviceman, any man or woman who has served, comes with consequences." His words hung in the air, piercing the arrogance of the bikers like a blade. The realization hit them hard. This wasn't just a random encounter with some guy they could pick on. This man had served with honor, and they had, quite literally, picked a fight with the wrong person. The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. The room, which had been buzzing with aggression, now stood in stunned silence. One of the bikers, his face flushing with guilt, shifted uncomfortably on his feet. He looked around, as if seeking confirmation from his gang members, but no one met his eyes. They had all seen what this man was capable of. Frank, though still trying to maintain some semblance of control, was visibly rattled. His usual demeanor of defiance had been replaced with a hint of fear, an emotion that he had not known how to deal with. I didn't know," Frank muttered, his words faltering. He tried to glare at the black man, but found that he couldn't look him in the eye. "Doesn't matter. You're still a coward?" The black man interrupted smoothly, his voice steady. "A thug. Those are the labels you want to put on me, right? Because I'm black? Well, you can take those and shove them. I've fought for this country. I've protected people like you, even people who don't deserve it. But this is where I draw the line." Frank's face turned red, but there was nothing he could say. The room was dead silent now, the bikers standing frozen, their earlier bravado completely dissipated. They had made a grave miscalculation. Their initial assumptions about who the man was had been shattered, and now, with the truth exposed, they were faced with the consequences of their actions. The black man didn't give them the satisfaction of a fight any longer. He simply turned his back, walking away with the same calmness that had first entered the bar. The bikers stood still, their leader stammering, unable to make a sound as the weight of their mistakes finally sank in. The black man's quiet dignity had diffused their aggression and left them humiliated in front of the entire bar. The realization was clear. They had underestimated the man they'd tried to bully, and now they had no choice but to watch him leave with their pride shattered. The black man, having calmly revealed his identity, didn't waste another second. He pulled out his phone from his pocket and dialed a number with steady hands. As the phone rang, the gang, still reeling from the realization of who he was, could barely muster any words. They knew they had miscalculated. But it wasn't just the physical fight that they would have to answer for. Something much more significant was coming their way. Minutes passed before the first sirens could be heard faintly in the distance. The black man remained calm, waiting without hesitation, as he stared at the bikers who were now too stunned to move. He didn't look back at them, but his mind was already on what would happen next. He had already given his superiors a heads up, ensuring that the gang would face the consequences of their actions, not just for their assault on him, but for the years of illegal activities that had been taking place under their noses. Within minutes, multiple law enforcement vehicles arrived at the bar, their lights flashing brightly against the darkened night. Officers, some local and some federal, poured into the establishment, quickly taking control of the situation. The gang members, who had once ruled this part of town with fear and intimidation, suddenly looked powerless. No longer could they hide behind their threats and their leather jackets. Their reign of terror was about to come to an end. The black man, standing with a composed demeanor, stepped aside as officers approached the gang, beginning their arrests. It wasn't just the physical assault on him that would be dealt with. The bikers had long been involved in illicit activities, drug trafficking, extortion, and numerous other criminal enterprises. The man had known about their operations for years. His patience had always been a part of his training, but tonight he wasn't going to let them slip through the cracks. As the officers moved in, evidence of the gang's illegal dealings was discovered in the back rooms of the bar. Hidden drugs, weapons, and documents detailing their racketeering operations were seized. The bikers, who thought they were untouchable, were swiftly cuffed and led outside to waiting squad cars. Their faces were a mixture of disbelief and fear as they realized their entire criminal network was now exposed. One by one, they were taken away, their arrogant swagger replaced by the cold, hard reality of arrest and impending trials. The black man stood near the bar, quietly observing as the law took its course. He didn't need to say much. His actions, his calm composure, and his resolve to protect others spoke louder than words ever could. But before leaving, he turned back toward the remaining bikers who had yet to be arrested, still frozen in disbelief. He gave them a look of quiet dignity that was far more powerful than any verbal confrontation could have been. With a deep breath, the black man stepped forward, his voice calm but firm as he addressed the few remaining gang members. "Let this be a lesson," he said, the weight of his words cutting through the silence. "Respect is earned, not demanded. Strength of character means more than strength of fists. You thought you could intimidate me. You thought you could use your size, your numbers, to get away with whatever you wanted. But it doesn't work like that, not anymore." His gaze swept over the remaining bikers, who now seemed less intimidating in the face of justice. "What you do to others will always come back to you. he continued, his voice steady. "It's not the way you look, where you come from, or the color of your skin. It's about who you are when no one is watching. That's what defines you. Not your threats, not your power, character. That's what makes you strong." The room was deathly silent. Every single biker was forced to confront the truth of his words. Their earlier bravado had been shattered, replaced by a haunting realization. They had tried to take control of the situation through violence and intimidation, but they had failed. The black man gave one final glance at the gang members, then turned on his heel and walked out of the bar. As he stepped into the cool night air, he felt a sense of closure, not just for himself, but for everyone the gang had ever harmed. The bikers had finally been held accountable, and the streets would be safer because of it. As the black man disappeared into the night, leaving the chaos of the bar behind, the bikers were left to face the consequences of their actions. They had underestimated the man, and now they were going to pay the price. The law had come for them, and there was no escape. They were no longer in control. The black man walked out of the bar with the same quiet composure he had carried throughout the entire ordeal. As he stepped into the crisp night air, the sounds of the sirens fading behind him, he felt a deep sense of calm. His mission had been clear, and he had achieved what he set out to do, not through violence, but through dignity, patience, and the sheer weight of his character. Behind him, the bikers were being led away in handcuffs, their heads lowered in shame as they were escorted out of the bar by law enforcement. Their tough demeanor, once so intimidating, had crumbled in the face of accountability. No longer did their leather jackets or bulging muscles offer them the protection they had once taken for granted. Now, they were just criminals facing the consequences of their actions. The black man, who had been so calm and collected in the face of their aggression, had shown them something far more powerful than brute strength. While they had relied on intimidation, he had used his discipline and integrity to navigate the situation. He had not let their insults or physical threats sway him. Instead, he remained steady, knowing that the true measure of strength was not in how loud one could shout or how hard one could hit, but in the ability to maintain poise in the most difficult moments. As the man made his way down the street, the events of the night replayed in his mind. He had stood his ground, never once succumbing to anger or rage, even when it would have been easy to do so. It was a skill he had honed over the years, a trait that had been instilled in him during his time in the army. Throughout his military career, he had learned that real power was not about exerting dominance over others, but about knowing when to stand firm, when to remain silent, and when to act. The bikers, for all their bravado and numbers, had been outmatched, not by his fists, but by his sense of justice and unwavering composure. The gang had believed they could intimidate him because of his race, but they had underestimated the power of his character. They had assumed that their presence and their violence would be enough to bend him to their will, but they had not counted on the strength of a man who had served his country and stood by his values through thick and thin. The black man's actions served as a powerful reminder that humility and self-control were far more valuable than physical power or aggression. His ability to remain composed in the face of adversity had not only ensured his own safety, but had also brought justice to the situation. The bikers would face the consequences of their actions, and their reputation would be forever tarnished by the events of that night. As the man disappeared into the shadows of the night, he knew that his work wasn't finished. He had not just stood up for himself. He had stood up for every person who had been hurt by this gang's reign of terror, And while the bikers may have been taken down for now, there would always be more work to be done. For the black man, every act of courage and every moment of restraint was part of a greater mission, a mission to build a world where justice and integrity were the forces that dictated the course of events, not hate or fear. In the end, the lesson was clear. True strength lies not in overpowering others, but in respecting oneself and others, in choosing to rise above the chaos and remain steadfast in the pursuit of what is right. The black man had proven that in the most powerful way possible,